into about £15,000 worth of debt and actually achieve what I've achieved, because it's not the case. People always ask me how I afford to travel so much, and the realistic is I started traveling whilst working a full-time job. I never took the time off to just travel. I did it all throughout working a full-time contract whilst doing overtime. Let's just get into everything. Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. We are starting a little mini series on how I travel and everything to do with how I travel, working and traveling together, my ultimate move to Australia, everything in this series. And there'll be more and more parts, but I decided to split my channel up a little bit. We love the vlogs, but I also want to give you guys some education and actually some understanding behind how I do what I do, why I do what I do, and actually like really integrate my knowledge and like share it with you guys, because I feel like I've learned everything not from school, an educational path, but everything I've learned through reading books, educating myself through podcasts, different people, social media, the internet, actually researching things. I've made so many mistakes and failures in this life, and I really just want to show you guys that you can actually do it. A failure is not a failure. So the biggest part of my job, I'm gonna share it. It's nerve-wracking to share it because there is a lot of scrutiny behind it, but it's the first time I've ever spoken about it on social media. So make sure you're subscribed because I'm dropping some gems. So support the girl. Support the girl, support the vision, support the channel. I worked for the London Ambulance Service for the last 4.5 years. That is crazy to say out loud considering I'm in a living room completely by myself right now. But I worked for the ambulance service in London for the last 4.5 years, and 12-hour shifts, 3 to 4 days a week as my contracted hours. And then I was someone who would always pick up 2 to 3 overtime shifts a week. Initially, the overtime was so good to the point I could do probably 4 to 5 overtime shifts a month and it paid for an entire trip because the overtime, but I never utilized it to my full advantage because I did start working at the tail end of COVID. So things were still up in the air in terms of travel. But as soon as 2023 hit, I just was like, I'm going to Asia for a month. And I could work it with my schedule because I could do time in lieu, so I could work in advance and then take off more time later on. I could also do the overtime, which then paid for it, and it'll be like double time plus £200. It was amazing. Make a lot of money very, very quickly. So because I knew how much I could make, I would then time block it. So if I wanted to go on a trip and it was going to cost me £1,000, I knew that I could do that in 4 shifts, and I'd book the trip and then work the 4 shifts. It was that kind of overtime that would be able to fund my trips. Like I'm not making that much from social media at the time. I did probably make about an additional £2,000, and that did pay a lot towards my trip to Asia because there was a lot of flights, a lot of hotels, a lot of different bookings, and it was a very expensive trip. I think the trip cost me about £3,000 to £4,000 for the month in Asia, and part of that was through TikTok, thankfully. However, majority of that still came from work. To get the time off, I had to still put the hours in. Like I said, I didn't just take time off to go traveling. However, that is an option. If you do work in the NHS, you are able to take a career break. I'm dealing with some stuff with work right now, so I haven't been able to take a career break. I might ultimately quit. We haven't decided yet. We're still going back and forth with work. That could all change. I could put something in here and put a comment. I'm not too sure what the outcome is going to be, but that is currently where we're standing. Travel just became this priority to me. I really wanted to travel a lot, and I ended up leaving a relationship. And the relationship it wasn't a terrible relationship. However, it wasn't fulfilling me in the way that I felt like I was lacking so much in life. And I ultimately want a family. I'm gonna hold my hand. I want a family. And he had said that wasn't his dream. He didn't want a family. That's not what he wanted. And I had a lot going on in my life, and I was like, you know what, you can't support me in any of my dreams, and quite frankly, I can't support you in any of your dreams. I ended up calling it quits. I wasn't sad, I wasn't depressed, and I wasn't grieving. My first trip after that was a week-long trip in Scandinavia, and that was expensive. And you know what, I put in the work towards that, And then it just gave me the travel bug, and I just started booking trips, and I ended up going on like 12 countries in 12 months that year. And then I was like, oh, actually, let me book Asia, because everyone's talking about Thailand. Let's figure it out. And that's exactly what I did. And I honestly, I was missing something in my life. And as much as I wanted a family, that was just not going to happen. It still hasn't happened yet. And I don't know when it's going to happen. But in the meantime, I needed something to fulfill me in life. And I'm not someone, I don't get excited about bags. I don't get excited about designer things. I couldn't care less about the kind of car that I'm driving. I honestly don't really care about other expensive things in this life. Even when it comes to going out and enjoying a fancy meal, I couldn't tell you the last time I went out and spent more than £50 on a meal ever. I don't think I've ever done that. So I genuinely prioritize. Travel is my priority. When it comes down to my expenses, very fortunate. I lived at home until I was 21, got kicked out, got into about £15,000 worth of debt, moved back home, and then between the end of being 21 and being kicked out at 25, I paid off £15,000 worth of debt because I got to live at home, and I'm very fortunate to have done that. I did have to pay with my mental health though. My mental health did take a massive toll, as it does when you live at home, and I think those who get to live in a safe home, congratulations. I just wasn't one of those people, and I don't mean violent safety. Well, not predominantly violent safety, but emotionally. And every day was a curtain of some sort. And then between that and my job, I felt like I had no escapism. My job is so taxing. I have people on the phone yelling at me. When I go home, my mum's yelling at me. Someone is forever yelling at me. But when I get to travel, no one is yelling at me. I don't answer the phone if I don't have to. I don't text people if I don't want to, and everyone is just genuinely so friendly whilst traveling. I think the UK is a massive problem because no one is friendly. I didn't get into Amex points and air miles until of 2025. No, mid 2020, about May 25, April or May, because that's when I might get the dates mixed up, but I didn't start with air miles or airline points, Amex points, any of that until the British Airways came out with, well, they had this prepaid debit card that got you Avios, and that's what I started on because I couldn't get a credit card. I was £15,000 in debt. I had an IVA. I always say don't get an IVA, it ruined my life. Like, I could have still got to where I am sooner because I paid my debt off in 2.5 years. I could have still got to where I am sooner, but the IVA blocks you from doing so many things. But at the same time, hindsight is 2020. It could have been also blocking me from making further mistakes. I don't know. But I feel like in terms of air mile points, it just blocked me so much. I would like to preface that I'm very aware of my privileges. Now, that doesn't take away from everything that I have worked towards. Now, I worked to get myself out of £15,000 worth of debt. If you want a whole dedicated video of how I did that, leave a comment down below. But I feel like a lot of people can relate to being in such a level of debt, and it was something that really haunted me too. And this happened all at COVID. So I've been there, been made redundant, and I've not had the money. The privilege was, yes, I got to live at home at that time, which is basically what I did. And I saved my money. I did have very little to no expenses, and I saved and I did all of that. So I recognize that I have the privilege to stay at home and I don't have kids. And I'm not saying that everyone in every circumstance can do exactly what I did, follow that blueprint and actually achieve what I've achieved, because it's not the case. And everyone's path is different. And this is why you take small things from different people and use what you think you can gain value from different people, and then acquire it into your own life and build your own future. Because you cannot follow my exact blueprint and end up where I've ended up because you think that's perfect for yourself. I'm not trying to sell you my life and be like, do this and you're gonna have travel to 30 odd countries and be super successful. That's not where we're at right now. I would say I planned for my trips somewhat in advance. I always knew what I wanted to do. It does take time, it does take effort, and it does take information. I would always plan a trip and see how much I would roughly need. And then when I thought I could make the trip happen, I'd just book it and we'll figure it out. But before I had my credit card, I kind of had to have the money. So sometimes I would, because I got paid weekly with my overtime, every week I'd book something new. So say the hotel cost £300 for the time and I was getting paid £300 that week, I'd do that. And then at least at the end of every month, it would be paid off. I'd still have all my bills paid and I'd even have money left over, which I was very lucky to do. But again, I was also working 5 to 7 days at a time. I'd take a day off and go do it again. So I'd constantly be working incredibly hard. I very rarely had any time to just do nothing. The only times of my life that I've had to just do nothing in terms of like, I'm not working towards the next goal, I'm not trying to do a lot of overtime, was when I was having my breakdown, my mental breakdown. And I had to force myself to stop, to focus on me mentally, to live. So I've been grinding every single day. And you guys have to also remember, I didn't just work, I also was growing my social media at the same time. And that came with its own challenges and its own difficulties. And on top of, it wasn't just one platform, I've been trying to grow 3 platforms, which I also think is one of the reasons why you always let one drop. And I accidentally let YouTube drop, but we're getting back into it, we're trying here. My biggest sacrifice when it came to travel has to be my time. And I say this not with regret, but just so people have a level of understanding that my time, guys, I don't have time to do anything. So if I didn't have time to spend money, all my time was spent either working or traveling. There wasn't that balance. And I think if you want to take that sacrifice, because if you do want to take it, then you will go places that you want to go. If you don't, then there's other avenues to figure it out. I'm just not that person to tell you how to do it, because I don't know, because I only ever worked and traveled. My biggest advice for people, and this is going to be a very generalized advice by the way, of those who think it's impossible to travel on a normal, I was on 34,000 a year. I think budgeting, look at your budget and see where you're going over. And I'm talking to people without kids. If you have kids and you've gotten this far, I don't know why you're trying to take any of this advice. But if you don't have kids, your expenses, what are you spending your money on? Did you have to spend all that money on your car? Can you change that? Can you refinance? Can you do something? If you've got a mortgage, can you speak to your financial people at the bank and see what you can do about it? Have you thought about making a switch from a regular credit card to an Amex? Now, again, I didn't get into Amex. I didn't get my Amex, my British Airways Amex I didn't get into the Amex until about 2 years ago now. I have now got a companion voucher and I now have the Amex Gold, which I kind of wish I started my Amex Gold, but that's a whole separate video in itself. If you want a whole video on credit card points and everything, I will do a whole separate video. I didn't get into all of that just off the bat. It took me a while to learn about it. I have over 100,000 Avios and about just under 50,000 Amex points, and I still have rarely used it to travel. I've used my Avios a lot more, so both my last 2 flights to New York were both Avios points flights, which made the flights super cheap. But in terms of everything else, guys, I didn't use air mile points to book anything. It's only those 2 flights to New York, and I want to keep saving my points because I really want a big luxury trip one of these days, and I'm trying to save the point. But in terms of like my spending habits have all revolved around making or gaining points of some sort. Because ultimately it got me a business class flight. It got me a flight to New York for, I think, was it £50? It got me on my business class flight for £200. So there are options, and it's now giving me options. I also flew home with Virgin once, and that was 10,000 points. Super easy. You can actually get 10,000 points just from having Virgin Red and doing their referral scheme. Just saying. This is not an ad, by the way. This is just me saying what I've done and what's possible. These are one-way flights. So learning learning the ins and outs of Amexes is going to be a whole separate video. I need to figure it out how I'd break it down because it's a whole ball game. But that's how I've been able to afford traveling and how I've made it possible to travel on a full-time salary. £34,000 a year with overtime. The amount I worked my first or second year working for the ambulance service, I believe I pulled in just under £50,000. Living in London, which that should be the living salary, no bills, no kids. I had a phone, I bought my phone outright, my iPhone 14 Pro Max. However, this iPhone is contracted or financed with Apple. It's fine, I just didn't have the funds at the time. But I've been able to learn to get out of debt. I get out of debt. Am I talking sense? In the last 5 years, I've been traveling a lot more. I've been able to get out of debt. I've been able to travel to different countries. I've been able to just feel the fear and do it anyway and just pick new destinations. Like, why not? I have no responsibilities, no kids, no nothing. So this is what's fulfilling me in my life and what's making me happy. And it is just a massive ball of fulfillment. And I love it so much. But next week, I'll be telling you guys how my exact monthly breakdown of like what I was doing whilst I was working, how much money I was bringing in, how I was spending the money, how I was optimizing everything, and the actual realities behind traveling that no one ever talks about, because boy, there are some hidden costs, especially as a solo traveler. Anyway, on that note guys, I'm going to end this video here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I am trying to make a bit more educational content for you guys, so if you like that, don't forget to hit the like button because that actually helps, and subscribe because it really does help me and support me and all of that stuff. Anyways, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.